Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Apothecary. Today, we are going to be discussing what happens when you forget to look at your vision board. We all know that when you are neurodivergent or when you have ADHD, we often forget, we go through this whole thing of creating the perfect vision board to print out, to put on the wall, putting it in this visible spot, or maybe you're making a digital vision board that you're using as your phone background or screensaver, or maybe you're making the perfect Notion template or whatever it is, and we go through all this trouble making sure that we get it perfect, making sure that we get it right, making sure that it depicts exactly what we want our future to look like. But then what happens? Maybe you forget about it. Maybe it falls off your wall, or maybe you have it as your screensaver on your phone, but because you're seeing it all the time, your mind just does this thing where you're kind of like blocking it out. And even though you're seeing it, you're not actively doing what it takes to have those dreams and manifestations and goals come into fruition. That has happened to me many times. I have had to remake and remake and remake a new vision board many times, and sometimes they work. There is something to seeing something every day that does imprint a certain image on your subconscious mind. So I'm not saying that visual vision boards don't work. I'm just saying that when you're neurodivergent, at least in my personal experience, sometimes your mind tends to block it out and you just kind of forget about it. So today we're going to be talking about what you can do to still stay on track with the vision that you have for your life, even when you have kind of blocked out this mental image of a vision board, right? So I'm going to give you 5 tips, and I'm going to give you those tips in the order of which I think you should do them, in the order that has been the most helpful for me. And so, yeah, that's what we're going to get into today. If you are a neurodivergent girly, if you've been creating all those vision boards and you still haven't seen a lot of results in your life, then stick around. I feel like these tips are really practical and really helpful. And so hopefully you get something out of this. The very first tip I have for you is to have a set of core beliefs that you can always refer back to. And you want to allow those core beliefs to anchor you in the vision that you have for yourself and for your life. Because we have ADHD, or because you're neurodivergent, our brains can crave novelty. And because we're constantly craving novelty, it can make setting rigid goals feel very limiting, right? And when you're trying to have this perfect notion board that you're going to allegedly show up for every single day, or when you're trying to create this perfect vision board, it starts to give your brain this sense of rigidity that makes you want to immediately kind of rebel against, if that makes sense, because you're telling yourself to do something. And as we know, when you're neurodivergent, you don't always love taking that instruction in the form of a command, right? Now, let's back up a little bit. What is a core belief? A core belief is a fundamental assumption about oneself that shapes your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So essentially, your core beliefs function as a lens that you see your life through, which, as we know, whatever you subconsciously believe about yourself is what is going to manifest, right? Now, these core beliefs are created initially, at least, in your adolescence, in your childhood, and they're formed through what is told to you, what you see in your environment on a daily basis, who you're around, the energy and mindsets of others around you, right? But when we are reparenting ourselves, we get the opportunity to create a new set of core beliefs that we want our life to be governed by, instead of inherently going by these subconscious beliefs that have been instilled in us. So you get to reparent yourself. You get to think about what serves you, what beliefs serve you, and what beliefs don't serve you. And then from that space, you get to make a new set of core beliefs. Now, how does this relate back to the ADHD brain and how it craves novelty? Well, when you are super rigid about your goals, this can feel limiting to your brain. And this means that when things change, which they inevitably will, right? Like the only constant is change. Things are always going to be changing in life. We're always going to be going through new seasons, new evolutions of ourselves. There's always going to be things happening outside of you that are out of our control, right? But what it means is that when these things change, we suddenly feel like we aren't, on track with our goals anymore. When life isn't perfect, when things aren't going exactly how we want them to go, suddenly that perfect Notion template and that perfect vision board becomes obsolete because it wasn't created with change in mind. It was created from a rigid structure or a finite way of which we want our manifestations to show up. And so, when you can refer back to a set of core beliefs instead of just visually relying on a vision board, it allows you to deal with and anticipate change. When you know what your values are, when you know what you believe, you can handle change without feeling like you've lost direction, right? Now, how do you create core beliefs? Well, really, it's anything that you want to be true about yourself now and in the future, right? So, for example, a core belief of mine is that my life always feels creative and expressive, and I always feel at peace. Maybe not always, right? Because like I said, change is inevitable. But I want for the overwhelming majority of my life to feel free, creative, expressive, and peaceful, right? Those are some of my personal core beliefs. So instead of getting my vision board perfect, I'm going to judge and weigh what happens in my life or the choices that I make against those core beliefs. So instead of thinking, oh, well, does this match my vision board? Does this match what my rigid set of goals are? Instead of thinking like that, I'm going to approach every situation and every opportunity with the idea of, does this feel peaceful? Or do I think this opportunity would welcome in more peace into my life? Or do I feel like it would welcome in a sense of chaos? Does this situation or opportunity, or does this person feel expressive? Does this opportunity feel creative? Do I feel like this thing would welcome in um, do I feel like it would welcome in more of what my core beliefs are? Or do I feel like it would go against that? Because, like I said, life is always changing and things are never going to look as perfect as they will on your perfectly curated Pinterest board or vision board. But when change happens, instead of being afraid of it, or instead of being afraid to get off track, because for me personally, I always feel like it's hard to build momentum being a neurodivergent person. I'll have all this motivation and momentum and I'll create the board and everything, and then something will change or something will happen, and then I will get off track, and then slowly but surely I lose momentum. And I feel like, oh my God, you start beating yourself up. Like, I said I was going to do all these things for myself, and, I haven't done them, and it's on my vision board, and it's not going to be finished by the end of the year, blah, 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 blah. And then that just puts you into a downward spiral, right? But when you can judge everything and weigh it against a set core belief, it makes you feel like you're flexible, like you're free, you're not compliant to this rigid set of goals, and it's still leading you towards what you want, because in the end, you want to feel how your future self will feel when you achieve all these things or when you get what you want to feel that now. And you want to see how you can welcome that into your life now. And a great way of doing that is being able to have this set of beliefs that you can judge and weigh everything against. The second tip I want to give you is to detach from the perfect vision that you have for your life and understand that growth is often non-linear. When we're neurodivergent, we have the tendency to hyper focus on whatever is right in front of us. But that hyper focus doesn't necessarily lead to more action. It just kind of leads us to exert all of our energy in one spot and kind of forget about everything else, which isn't necessarily what we need to move forward towards our goals. Hyper focusing isn't necessarily bad because it is a form of focus, right? But sometimes when we hyper focus, we will zero in on the most unimportant parts, or the parts that are right in front of us, or we'll hyper focus on this perfect idea of what our life should look like. And if we feel like those things aren't coming into our life the exact way that we're envisioning them, we feel as though our manifestations are not working. But the thing is, growth is not linear. We sometimes feel like it should be step one, and then there's step two, and then there's step three, and then there's step four, and then there's step five, and then I'm going to have my dream life. And if we're being honest, that's not really how growth and progression works. Usually it's step one, and then there might be a detour. And then you build the momentum back up. There's step two, and then you make a mistake. And then that mistake can maybe feel a little bit overwhelming. And so maybe take a break or something. And then there's step three and step four. You understand what I'm saying? Growth is not always linear. And the sooner we allow ourselves to detach from that perfect vision that we have for our lives, it will allow our brains to relax and understand that the mistakes are part of the journey. There's some, like, how do you know that the mistake you just made is what is going to allow you to learn in order for you to get to step three? You know what I mean? Like, maybe you were never going to get to step three without making that mistake, because you had to learn to become the version of yourself that can get to step three. You had to go on that detour. You had to go on that journey of self love and self discovery so that you can continue the rest of the steps. We have to view our lives as the hero's journey. There's no, story that you read where the protagonist and the main character isn't going through something, or isn't fighting battles, or, having to face themselves in some regard. Those are all a part of the journey. And as much as we want what we want, as much as we want our goals, as much as we want our manifestations, at the end of the day, this is about becoming the person who can have what we want. It's not just about what we want, it's understanding that we're deserving of it, understanding that we can have it, understanding that we're the kind of person who can bring this dream into reality. And how are you going to be able to do that if you don't make some mistakes? If you don't learn things, if you don't go on this journey of self discovery. So we have to let go. We have to stop, or at least attempt to stop hyperfixating so much on this perfect idea and vision that we have for our lives, because this will allow our brain to relax. And this will allow us to be open to the synchronicities and the what appears to be randomness of what is going on around us. But in reality, these are the very things that are working with us to push us forward to our goals and to our manifestations. The third tip I want to give you is to practice saying no. You want to use your discernment to help you determine what is aligned for you. So you want to use your yes and your no to push you closer to what your manifestation goal is, as opposed to allowing your yes or no to hold you back, right? Because when we're neurodivergent, we are subject to impulsivity, which means that we might say yes to opportunities or situations that are not actually aligned to what we want. And then once we say yes to something that we don't really want or doesn't feel like a full bodied yes to us, we find ourselves being stuck in these situations because we weren't able to use our discernment and modulate our energy because of that. So when you practice saying no to what isn't aligned to you, you give yourself more confidence and energy to respond to what feels like a yes. And if you've done the inner work with your core beliefs, going back to that first point, you'll understand what a yes feels like, because a yes will be something that is aligned to your core values that you've established for yourself, right? So we want to really start developing the sense of discernment and allowing our yeses to reflect what we actually want and not just what is being presented in front of us, because opportunities can come at any time. And I feel like the world kind of makes it seem like, hustle culture makes it seem like you need to jump on every single opportunity. But in my experience, I don't believe that to be true. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And I feel like as neurodivergent people, especially if you have ADHD, we have that hyperactivity portion. So a lot of times we have a lot of energy, but if we're not using our discernment correctly, we will lose that energy and become burnt out because we're putting that energy behind the wrong thing instead of being selective and putting our energy towards what we really want and the goals that we want and the feelings, going back to those core beliefs that we want to feel now and in the future. Kind of piggybacking off of that last tip, sometimes it's easy to say use your discernment, right? And of course, like I said, we can always tap back into that core set of beliefs. But sometimes when you're neurodivergent, especially when you have ADHD, that can put our minds in a constant mental motion, which can overload our mental capacity and really begin to start causing confusion in our minds because we are relying so much on our mental capacity, right? But the thing is, the body has wisdom too. And sometimes the body actually knows what a yes or a no is before our mind even does. And so a way to feel what a yes or a no feels like is to tap into your body and evaluate how something physically makes you feel. If you're looking at the screen right now, I'm going to have an image up that kind of shows the different ways that our body says no, right? So sometimes a no can feel constrictive or restrictive. A no can feel like a knot in your stomach. Or it can feel like maybe you're feeling a little bit sick or just something's feeling a little bit off. And so you want to find ways to drop into the body. And if you're not connected to your body, there's a little bit of homework for you. An easy way to tap into your body and what it's trying to tell you is to begin to move your body and work with your body. And you can do this in many different ways. Of course, you have meditation, you have yoga. Those are nice when you want something slow and contemplative. But you can also play a sport. You can do a martial art. You can dance, which always brings up a lot of motion. You can stretch your fascia. You can give yourself a massage. You can soak your feet. You can go see a practitioner or like a naturopathic doctor. All of these are various ways for you to tap into the wisdom of your body and begin to just become familiar with your body, become familiar with the sensations of your body. And, it might take a little bit of time to develop, But once you do, you will be able to tap into that wisdom when you need to. And you will know when something feels constrictive, when your chest feels tight, when you maybe feel like you can't breathe or like there's a knot in your throat or something, right? You'll begin to understand that these are the ways that the body says no. And you can take the wisdom of your body and use it as a way to make a decision about whether or not you should be doing something or whether or not this thing or this opportunity, the situation is going to push you towards your goals. And then when you pair the wisdom of the body with your discernment, and when you pair your discernment and back it with those set core beliefs, you're beginning to make a system that automatically will tell you whether or not something is pushing you forward in the direction that you want to go, or if something is just showing up in a form of busy energy, or just something that really isn't something that you desire, but something that's popping up in your reality. Now, once you have done steps 1 through 4, once you have set your core beliefs, once you have let go of the perfect vision that you have for your life, once you have practiced your discernment, and once you have dropped into the wisdom of the body, you are going to give yourself a very good foundation that is going to help you determine if you are moving in the direction of your goals, in the direction of what you have on your physical vision board, or if it's something that is going to keep you stagnant, right? And you can do all of this without ever having to physically look at that vision board. Once you do steps 1 through 4, the very last tip I'm going to give you is to create a living vision board. When you are neurodivergent, when you have ADHD, we are very imaginative and creative people. And our brain recalls experiences when they are attached to sensory memory. So when you are using and activating your 5 senses, our brain will use these connections more efficiently to keep it in the forefront of our mind, right? So we want to work with our imagination and with our creativity because we have an abundance of it instead of working against it. And what I mean by a living vision board is that you want to take the images that you have on your vision board and you want to attach them to your sensory input, because the vision board that you have on your wall, the vision board that you have on your Pinterest board or whatever, those are static boards. Those are boards that aren't moving, they're not alive, right? They're just there. They're only attached to one of your senses, which is sight, but you're not connecting to all of these other senses, right? And so, what you want to do to take your vision board from static to living is to start associating the images or the goals on your vision board with certain things in your 3D reality. So, for example, one of the things I do is I like to go on walks. Now, when I am walking on the trail, you know, I'm really just looking at what's in front of me, trees, the little stream that's next to me. But sometimes what I do is when I'm walking on that trail, without closing my eyes, I start to drop into my imagination and I choose a place that I want to be. So I will use my imagination. So I'm walking down this trail, right? It's a trail that I walk all the time. I know what it looks like. I know where I'm going, right? But instead, I will use my imagination to transport me to wherever I want to go, whatever is on my vision board. So if you have a specific city or place that you want to live in, instead of really looking at or concentrating at what is physically on that path, you want to start imagining that you are in the place you want to be. So when I'm walking down the trail, I'm not just walking down this trail in my city. I am walking in the city I want to live in. I'm imagining the buildings next to me. I'm imagining the sounds of traffic, or I'm imagining different clothes that I'm wearing, right? I'm using my imagination, my creativity, my mind's ability to create a narrative and a story to transport me where I want to be so I can live in that reality right now. because as we know, the brain doesn't know what is real versus what is fake. The brain only knows sensory input. And so you can use that imaginative quality to put you in the place that you want to be. Another way that I do this is through perfumes and scent association. I will use certain perfumes to invoke a specific mood, right? So if I know that something on my vision board is getting into a good school and being a good student and studying, I'm going to wear a perfume that smells like studying to me, right? Whatever I would want to wear that I associate with getting work done and sitting down in the library or, sitting on your college campus, wear a perfume, and every time you spray that, only use it for that specific memory or that specific imagination. And when you spray it, you are creating a scent association in your mind. So every time you smell that perfume, you're going to transport yourself into the reality of, or into the personality of the person that you are becoming. Another way I do this is with incense. I have different sorts of incense that I burn in my house that I associate with different actions. So I have these incense that are kind of like geared towards like the crown chakra. And whenever I need to be studying the financial market, whenever I need to be doing research into something, I burn that incense because even if it's not true, my mind associates that with being open minded, with opening my crown chakra, with intaking information, right? When I'm working out, I burn incense that are meant for the root chakra because when I'm working out, I want to feel grounded. I want to feel safe in my body, right? So I'm going to burn that incense every time I work out, which is going to help my mind make that association that when I move my body, I'm grounded and I'm safe. You can also do this through tactile experiences. If one of your goals on your vision board, if one of your core beliefs is that you want your life to feel comfortable, think about how you can bring in comfort to your life through your tactile experiences. Maybe you buy a really fluffy blanket that's super warm and luxurious, or maybe something knitted, a super soft texture. Your mind is going to associate that with comfort. And then you can pair these things together, right? Maybe you buy this super nice knitted cashmere blanket and then you spray it with a perfume that feels comforting to you. Now you're not only having a visual mood board, now you're having a tactile experience and you're also having a scent association, right? You can also do this with music and playlists. I often make playlists that fit the vibe of the life that I want, in whatever season I'm making that vision board. And I will play that playlist every morning or on my break to remind me of like, oh yeah, this is how I want to feel. This is the energy I want to welcome into my life. And then you can also, so now you're using your hearing to bring in that association. And then you can also use journaling too. You can journal as if you are already the person that you want to be. And you can journal from that space and manifest what you want. Journal about your day as if you are already in the position that you want to be in. If you want a certain promotion or a certain job, you can journal and say, oh my goodness, today was just the best day. I did this on my job and then I did this, and it just feels so nice to be in this position and have all these things, even if you don't have them yet. Again, you're using your imagination and your senses, what you can feel, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell, and you're using all of these to physically put yourself in the reality that you want to be in. And so when you pair all of these things with your static vision board, you are creating a full immersive experience for yourself as opposed to just relying on the physical mood board. So, guys, those are the 5 tips that I had for you when you are neurodivergent and when the physical static vision board just isn't enough for you, when you start to look past it. These are ways that you can physically ground yourself in your reality and still continue to manifest and move forward with your goals without feeling like you constantly have to start over or constantly feeling like you are getting off track with the vision that you have for your life. Because the thing is, when you're neurodivergent, we're going to be like this for the rest of our lives, right? So instead of working against ourselves and trying to do things in the way that society says we need to do things, it's time to begin to start working with ourselves and finding ways to reach our goals without feeling like we aren't good enough or that we don't have what it takes to survive in this world. So if you like this video, please comment down below. If you have any tips on how you like to stay on track with your neurodivergence, also comment that down below. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Bye guys, I'll see you in the next one.